last week playing this one. Multi-role solitaire, I guess is what you can call it. God mode, whatever label works best for you. But this is the final board position, and as you can see, well, some mistakes were made. So I thought I'd address a few of my strategic mistakes for the OKW in particular, and also for the Soviets, because I feel like I made mistakes with both sides that contributed to a very lopsided ending. First of all, if the war had ended this way, it would have been a vastly different Cold War, because the Soviets have yet to cross the Vistula. They had just taken Warsaw, but hadn't penetrated down very far into the Balkans, just a small crossing into Bessarabia in Romania, but nothing of strategic significance there yet. They were prohibited from entering Hungary because the Allies got there first. And yeah, so Hungary, Austria, Czechoslovakia would have, in all likelihood, have been aligned with the West. Probably would have had civil wars in the Balkans and with some Soviet influence there. But that's where things end. Now, what went wrong here? First of all, the Soviets were doing so well, and then it just kind of stalled out. What happened, I think, is I began to take notice of how many attack options they're going to have in the course of a turn. And I became, I think, a little bit too cautious with them, trying to set up only big attacks. And what I really should have done is just kept hammering away, even if I'm only on the two column. I should have just kept hammering away with them instead of trying to set up more elaborate battles of destruction. We were able to destroy Army Group Center, and Army Group South, but Army Group North was able to fight a retreat out of the Baltic, and the end result ended up just not getting the kind of breakthroughs, and OKH was able to continually reconstitute itself using smaller number of units, but keeping them at relatively high strength. I didn't counterattack very often with OKH, but when I did, they were important counterattacks, spoiling attacks in order to foil the Soviets' next attack opportunity. So, mistake with the Soviets, I think I was just plain too cautious. If you look at the troop strengths, most of these guys are at full strength, and that shouldn't have been the case. I should have just been hammering away, even if the attack odds weren't great, just inflict casualties, because OKH was able to keep up with the casualties I was inflicting, sacrificing units along the way because of a shrinking necessary frontage. So that was the big mistake, I think, with the Soviets. With the West, this was the huge mistake. I think I did well to get the OKW units out of Africa relatively early. I was able to extract both of them, and what that ended up doing is giving me quality units to resist a landing in Sicily, which is where, it's kind of the no-brainer. If the Allies are going to land early, they're probably going to hit Sicily. And so it was actually a real touch-and-go struggle for the island of Sicily. It was difficult for the Allies to finally capture Messina. It took some doing to get into the boot of Italy. It invaded from the south. We didn't do any Anzio landings. They should have been able to stop the Allies at Cassino, but the Allies rolled really well and had tons of cards to offset the enormous disadvantages to the terrain there. The Germans were able to keep the Allies out of Rome for a long enough period that I felt like it was a credible defense. So overall, I was kind of happy with how things went in the Italian peninsula. The big downfall was in France, where I had set up numerous forts. Most of my fortification troops I had flipped over to fort status. I was trying to defend every beach with a fort or a two-step unit. And I think that was the mistake. At the end of the day, the Allies are going to land in France, or they're going, if they want to land somewhere, they're going to land. And they're going to have enough cards in their hands to offset some of the penalties. They're going to get ashore. And I think what I probably should have done is I should have defended the easier beaches like the Pas de Calais or Normandy, where it only costs 6 transport points to land. I think I probably should have just conceded the Brittany coast and the west coast of France. I should have just gone ahead and conceded that. Defend the southern port here in Marseille, because you don't want the Allies cutting off the Germans in the Italian boots. So I feel like you do need to still defend a couple beaches there. But if the Allies spend 8 points to land at Girona, that's going to mean they can't land somewhere else. So that would allow you to strip defenses and then try to contain the invasion. If all of your guys are flipped over to fort, though, you can't do that. So once the Allies commit, there's only one card in the event deck that can come out and allow you to reflip those forts back over to mobile troops. And that was huge. When the invasion did occur, OKW couldn't respond effectively. They briefly contained it in the Normandy perimeter, but once the line was breached, there wasn't a good secondary line, and because of the way the chits came up, the Allies got a back-to-back move and encircled Paris and got the bulk of the OKW destroyed in Paris, penetrating all the way as far as Strasbourg, and I mean they're right on the Rhine by the end of June. So this was that was just an absolute disaster. What I probably should have done, like I said, is go ahead and concede some of these difficult beaches here. Defend the ones that if they're captured, that would be bad. Like Amsterdam, the Netherlands. You want to defend these because if the Allies land in the North German plain is available to them, that's a disaster. So I think you really want to defend those. But I think some of these forts would have been better served back on the Rhine and establish something of a west wall. And I didn't have that. I built a lot of armies that I never got beyond 2 pip strength. And I think that's because I was able to extract the army from North Africa, pour a lot of resources into keeping those guys strong, to the neglect of any kind of meaningful defense for the Atlantic Wall or the West Wall. West Wall never happened, period. So at the end of the day, when the Allies finally overwhelmed the Germans in Italy, the road to southern Germany is wide open. The road across the Rhine's wide open. They were knocking on the door of Berlin and came with a whisker of winning the war before the Soviets even took Warsaw. So, big lessons learned. And this is what's so cool about Downfall is after playing this, and it's probably got like 6-7 hours of gameplay in, and I want to set it up and play it again. That's the mark of a really good game. It gets you thinking about the strategy. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? And boy, I want to play this one again. So I definitely encourage checking out Downfall. But here's what I'm going to do next time. I'm not going to play the campaign. I want to set up the Downfall Overlord scenario where it starts with Normandy. So you're not going to worry about sea control or any of that. But I want to practice some new strategies on how to effectively use the OKW, because I feel like that has been a point of struggle. Strategies with OKH, I need to use the same kind of strategy with OKW, defending against an enemy that can strike you anywhere along a very long chord of the arc. As the Allies, I love how you have options. I flirted with the idea, because the Soviets were doing so well, I flirted with the idea of spending resources to invade Crete, which allows you then from there to establish a base and then invade Greece in the Aegean. You can't just jump into invading Salonika or off of Athens. You have to get a base in the same sea zone. So it's a 2-stage process getting into the Balkans, but if I had been able to do that, my intention was to narrow the frontage that OKH has to defend. Go ahead and allow the Western Allies to retake Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, get into these areas here. That would make life difficult, I think, for the Soviets. I kind of like that idea, but then at the same time, there's such a commitment, and you're going to tip your hand so much that unless things have gone really well in Italy, I feel like they can just strip France and move to the east to block that, and maybe get you bottled up along this line of mountains, just defending the opening gap between the Alps and the Carpathians. So, anyways, that was a strategy I briefly flirted with, but ultimately did not need to use. But I definitely want to explore it. I also mentioned this just in passing, that after my first game, I realized you really do need to pay attention to those partisans, and the Soviets had absolutely abysmal luck with the partisans. Rolling on the partisan table, they rolled less than a 5, I think, on at least 3 occasions, and I don't think they ever got 2 partisans in any one roll. So the Western Allies were actually flirting with an auto victory. There's 1 card for each faction that will come out, and if you have enough partisans, if you have 6 partisans and control of Paris, that would win the game for the West, regardless of anything else. Or if you have 6 partisans in Warsaw for the Soviets, that's an auto win that you do need to be mindful of. So aware of this, I used the Bulgarians pretty aggressively along with Hungarian units to hunt down the few Soviet units that did show up. They all kept showing up in Serbia, and so I just stationed guys into Serbia so I could kill the ones that were there and then blocked any other legal placements, and that rendered future Soviet die rolls for Serbia to be ineffective. That's another good use for all of those security divisions. One last thing I will say about the security divisions, that's kind of cool, is I began to use them to block the Soviets, force the Soviets to attack these worthless units. And yeah, they're gone permanently, but they're burning up those precious attack orders to kill these guys, and then I'm preserving the strength of my main units to set up a creditable defense along the Vistula. And I feel like that was a really good fighting withdrawal that I was able to achieve with the OKH. So there you go. That's Downfall, and what a downfall it was.